Hi, welcome to Clat. You know that Clat is for sure success classes as well as career guidance and more particularly role of the judiciary. Actually, you know that this Clat examination postponed uh, means nearly I feel it is postponed to third week of June as well as the UPSC examinations also due to this corona pandemic. I received many mails and many of the students requested me for the notes on Supreme Court jurisdiction and rules. So today I am taking the class on Supreme Court jurisdiction as well as rules. This is very important. So you have to see this video number of times to get the information and to understand this class very easily. In this class, I will explain you what type of matters shall be comes under the original jurisdiction of the Supreme Court as well as what type of matters shall be comes under the jurisdiction of the appellate jurisdiction of the Supreme Court and as well as advisory jurisdiction. So this is a very important topic to both the class students as well as to the UPSC aspirants. While coming to the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court, Article 124 to 147 explains and deals with the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. Article 124 to 147 deals and related to the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. The jurisdiction of the Supreme Court classified as first one original jurisdiction and second one appellate jurisdiction and the third one advisory jurisdiction and the fourth one is revisionary jurisdiction. These four are very important. First one is original jurisdiction and the second one is appellate jurisdiction and the third one is advisory jurisdiction and the fourth one is revisionary jurisdiction. So what is the difference between the original jurisdiction and the advisory jurisdiction as well as the advisory jurisdiction and the appellate jurisdiction and the difference between the appellate jurisdiction and the advisory jurisdiction as well as the revisionary jurisdiction. First, take the original jurisdiction. This jurisdiction means original jurisdiction as well as appellate jurisdiction is there for high courts also. As well as while coming to the original jurisdiction of the Supreme Court, under this original jurisdiction, Supreme Court has power to hear the matters which are related to Government of India and either one state or more than one states. Means under the original jurisdiction of the Supreme Court can hear the matters which are related to Government of India versus any state or states. This is the first one. And the second one, Supreme Court can hear the writ petitions as well as the public interest litigations under Article 32 for the enforcement of fundamental rights. Enforcement of fundamental rights. And the third one is Supreme Court has power under its original jurisdiction to transfer any civil case or criminal case from one high court to another high court. These are the matters comes under the original jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. First one, under the original jurisdiction of the Supreme Court can hear or Supreme Court has power to hear the matters related to Government of India versus any state or more than one state. Second one, Supreme Court has power or Supreme Court can hear the matters under original jurisdiction under Article 32 for enforcement of fundamental rights. Enforcement of fundamental rights in a form of writ petitions or public interest litigations. And the third one is Supreme Court has power or Supreme Court can hear or Supreme Court can transfer the matters from one high court to another high court under the original jurisdiction. These are the matters comes under the original jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. Next, the second one. Second one is appellate jurisdiction. All the matters comes under Article 132 and 133 and 134 deals with the appellate jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. Article 132 means these are related to special leave petitions, and Article 133 are related to civil appeals, and Article 134 related to criminal appeals. The difference between the three I will explain you. See, if you file a writ petition before the High Court, and if the High Court dismisses that writ petition, you have liberty to file an appeal before the concerned High Court before the division bench. Even though the division bench also, if the division bench also dismissed the writ appeal, then what the option you have? You have to go to the Supreme Court. But here, to go to the Supreme Court, certificate by High Court is mandatory. Moreover, there is no appeal against the writ petitions to the Supreme Court. Then what to do? For this type of cases, there is a provision called as special leave petitions. Means you have to file an application before the Supreme Court that there is an illegality in the judgment passed by the so and so High Court, even though there is no provision to file an appeal against that writ petition before this Supreme Court, but due to there is an illegality, kindly permit us to bring this matter to the notice of the Supreme Court. This entire procedure is called as special leave petition under Section 132. For this Section under this Article 132, for the petitions under Article 132, which are known as special leave petitions, the certificate by the High Courts or other courts, other concerned courts are not required. Because in the Supreme Court of India, in its SLP, it will decide whether it is a fit case or not to hear. So, if you file an SLP under Article 132 before the Supreme Court of India challenging the writ petitions or writ appeals passed by the concerned High Courts, then the certificate by the High Court is not required. And all this type of petitions are called as special leave petitions. Special leave petitions. And for other petitions, means either the civil appeals or the criminal appeals. The matters which filed before the Supreme Court of India under Article 133 are called as civil appeals, as well as the matters which filed before the Supreme Court of India under Article 134 are called as criminal appeals. For both these petitions, means for the civil appeals as well as the criminal appeals, the certificates by the High Court or concerned courts are mandatory to file. Without the certificate, you cannot file either the civil appeal or criminal appeal before the Supreme Court. And what type of matters will come? Means some of the matters which are either decided by the High Court or some other courts. Means some of the matters shall be decided by either the High Court or by some other courts. If the matters decided by the High Courts, then you have a provision to go to the Supreme Court. As well as if some of the matters decided by either the tribunals or the commissions or something etc. like that, even then also you can go to the Supreme Court directly to challenge the concerned orders of the other tribunals or commissions etc. or other courts. Means what type of matters will hear by the Supreme Court which are not related to the High Court but related to some other courts. I will explain you. See, the matters which are related to Section 35 of Monopolies and Restrictive Trade Practices Act 1969 means either the concerned tribunal or court passed the order which are related to the Section 35 of Monopolies and Restrictive Trade Practices Act 1969, you can go to the Supreme Court directly without approaching the High Court. As well as some other matters. The matters which are related to Section 130E of Customs Act. Means if you are not satisfied the judgment passed by the concerned court which are related to the Section 130E of the Customs Act, you can prefer an appeal before the Supreme Court of India. As well as other matters related to Section 35L of Central Excise and Salt Act. As well as some of the matters related to Section 14 of Terrorist Affected Areas Act. This is very important. Terrorist Affected Areas Act means Section 14 related to Section 14 of Terrorist Affected Areas Act. As well as Section 16 of TADA 1985. You know that TADA Act, I need not explain you. As well as which means the matters which are related to the Section 16 of TADA 1985, you can prefer an appeal before the Supreme Court under its appellate jurisdiction. And as well as Section 17 of the TADA 1987. And also Section 23 of the Consumer Disputes Redressal Commission's matters. Means Consumer Protection Act. Section 23 of the Consumer Protection Act. As well as some other acts also there. Means you can prefer appeal to challenge the order passed by the Armed Forces Tribunals also directly before the Supreme Court of India, and Supreme Court of India will hear the appeals against the Armed Forces Tribunal under its appellate jurisdictions. So, what are the matters comes under the appellate jurisdiction of the Supreme Court means the matters comes under Article 132 means which can be filed by way of special leave petitions and with the certificate by the concerned High Court under Article 133 as well as 134 means civil appeals as well as the criminal appeals, as well as other matters means related to the other courts which are means related to section 35 of Monopolies and Restrictive Trade Practices Act 1969 and section 130E of Customs Act and section 35L of Central Excise and Salt Act and section 14 of Terrorist Affected Areas Act and section 16 of TADA 1985 and section 17 of TADA 1987 and also section 23 of Consumer Protection Act as well as against the order passed by the Armed Forces Tribunal. These are the matters comes under the appellate jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. Means Supreme Court has power to hear all these matters under its appellate jurisdiction. Appellate jurisdiction. And the third one is advisory jurisdiction. Means President of India can take the advice of the Supreme Court under Article 143. Means he may refer some of the matters to the Supreme Court for the advice of the Supreme Court. For the advice of the Supreme Court. The matters which are referred under Article 143 by the President of India, Supreme Court will submit its advice to the Honorable or His Excellency President of India. As well as the matters which are comes under Article 3171 may refer to the Supreme Court for its advice. As well as which matters can refer to the Supreme Court. I will explain you. Section 257 of Income Tax Act means the matters which are related to the section 257 of Income Tax Act shall be referred to the Supreme Court under its advisory jurisdiction. As well as section 7.2 of the Monopolies and Restrictive Trade Practices Act 1969. Here you have to observe one important point. See, if the matter related to section 35 of the Monopolies and Restrictive Trade Practices Act 1969, it cannot come under the Advisory Act. It is to be preferred by way of appeal, and the Supreme Court will hear these matters under its appellate jurisdiction. But if the matter related to section 7.2 of Monopolies Restrictive Trade Practices Act 1969, it will be referred to the Supreme Court under its advisory jurisdiction. And the next one is section 130A of Customs Act. The matters which are related to the section 130A of the Customs Act shall be referred to the Supreme Court for its advice. But here the matters which are related to section 130E of the Customs Act shall be go for appeal, and Supreme Court hear these matters under its appellate jurisdiction. These differences are very important. You have to note down and you have to listen very carefully. And the other one is section 35H of Central Excise and Salt Act. Means the matter pertaining to section 35H of Central Excise and Salt Act shall be referred to the Supreme Court under advisory jurisdiction. But here the matters which are related to 35L of the Central Excise and Salt Act shall be preferred by way of appeal, and the Supreme Court of India will hear such matters only under its appellate jurisdiction. Appellate jurisdiction. And the next one is section 82C of Gold Control Act. Means these matters shall refer to the Supreme Court of India, and Section 7(2) of Sikh Industrial Companies Act. Sikh Industrial Companies Act. And the last one is election petitions which are related to Part 3 of the Presidential and Vice Presidential Elections Act. All these matters comes under the advisory jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. Once again, I will repeat what are the matters comes under the advisory jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. Please listen carefully. The matters which are related to Article 143 means referred by His Excellency President of India to the Supreme Court for the advice of the Supreme Court. For the advice of the Supreme Court. And the next one, the matters pertaining to Article 3171, as well as the matters related to Section 257 of Income Tax Act, and the matters related to Section 7(2) of Monopolies and Restrictive Trade Practices Act 1969, and the matters related to Section 130A of Customs Act, and the matters related to Section 35H of Central Excise and Salt Act, as well as the matters related to Section 82C of Gold Control Act, and the matters related to Section 7(2) of Sikh Industrial Companies Act, as well as the matters related to election petitions comes under Part 3 of Presidential and Vice Presidential Elections Act. All these matters comes under the advisory jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. Here you have to note down 3 points. If the matters related to Section 7(2) of Monopolies and Restrictive Trade Practices Act 1969, it shall be comes under the advisory jurisdiction of the Supreme Court because it will be referred to the Supreme Court. If the matters related to Section 35 of the Monopolies and Restrictive Trade Practices Act 1969, it is to be preferred by way of appeal before the Supreme Court because these matters comes under the appellate jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. As well as if the matter related to Section 130A of the Customs Act, it shall comes under the advisory jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. If the matters related to Section 130E of the Customs Act, it shall comes under the appellate jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. And the next one, if the matters related to Section 35H of the Central Excise and Salt Act, it shall be referred to the Supreme Court under its advisory jurisdiction. But if the matters related to Section 35L of the Central Excise and Salt Act, it is to be filed by way of appeal before the Supreme Court because all these matters comes under the appellate jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. These are the difference between the appellate jurisdiction and the advisory jurisdiction of the Supreme Court related to the concerned matters. As well as the last one is revisionary jurisdiction. Under Article 137, the Supreme Court of India has power to either review or revise its own judgments. So, Supreme Court of India has revisionary jurisdiction under Article 137. This is the class on Supreme Court of India and its jurisdiction. We will discuss some other important topic in the next class. Till then, bye.